Yeah, so somebody wanted me to talk about the quote from Mohanji, a brief quote, so I'll speak about that. And then also there was this text about Raj Yoga as well on the group. I can talk about that as well. But this quote was, I can remember it right, it was fall in love with emptiness, fall in love with love, but don't become a love story. Very nice quote. I like this one. I remember um, in my own life as well. I had this probably about best part of 10 years ago when I really started to connect. Initially started to connect with this empty point or this silent point, and definitely, definitely, I fell in love with that one because when I touched that, I was like, okay, this is home. This needs to be the constant state. Also, I remember talking with Mohanji one time as well, and he was telling me about how he used to do this meditation in the morning from whatever, like 3 a.m. up to 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. And then he said sometimes I'd even do it at night as well after working all day. And he said I just loved it. I said yes. So it's not like it was some kind of abstract discipline. It's that, as he said, one falls in love with that emptiness. One likes that state. So, what is emptiness in this case? What is emptiness empty of? The word emptiness implies that something is not there. So, what's not there? Basically, our entire, you know, usual structure of thinking is not there. It's a space of silence. So in that state, we are empty of ourselves. What we take to be ourselves, which is a very complicated thing actually. If we were to sit down and go inside and say, okay, where is me actually? When I say this, you know, I am this, I am that, I feel that, I think that. If we go inside ourselves and look and say, okay, well, where's the actual, where is this me? Where is this core? Where is this center of this personality actually sitting? If we do that investigation in great depth, we'll find that there's no center there within us whatsoever. It's just one thought after another, one thought after another thought. I am this, I am that, I think this, I feel that. Um, but who is this I actually? Is there anything solid about this I? Once you go past these thoughts and you just look at this feeling of I, does it have a shape? Does it have a form? Does it have a color? Does it have a name? We're all identified with our names that we're given when we're born, but these names are totally arbitrary. It's just like a label. So we are not our name, right? And okay, there's a body there appearing. We have a body that kind of looks the same from one day to the other, but even that's not exactly fixed. When we're born, we look very different when we die, right? So even the body is not fixed. So everything about ourselves that we usually identify with and say, I am this, I am that. It's all like a flux. It's all just a changing patterns over time, changing mental patterns, emotional patterns that move over time, a body that changes over time and eventually won't function. So the empty point, if we can just come to a place in ourselves where we're just able to forget about who we think we are for just 1 second only. And we all have these these tiny, tiny, tiny little moments are scattered throughout all of our lives already. It's just usually they're so short that we don't notice them. Not only are these moments so short, but our thinking is so usually dense and heavy and kind of meaningful to us that it creates a kind of fragrance. It creates such a fragrance that, you know, even some people you get, they can have experiences of great silence. They can plunge into great silence. Some can even have, direct perception of their own nature. Some people can have this direct perception even on things like outer body experiences. Some people can even have it on like psychedelic drugs and this kind of thing. But these patterns that we usually have of thinking are so strong that even if we have such an experience and then we come out of the experience, we're quickly back into that same old perspective. So what needs to happen is that this, what we call emptiness, silence, stillness, has to be consistently cultivated over time, right? Because that has to be our main priority in life, is feeling this empty point, connecting to this empty point, and to keep coming back to it over and over and over and over again. Only then does that, then those little points of emptiness, that starts to dilute all of that thinking. So the more you can inject, I like to use this word inject for this, the more you can inject silence or emptiness into the ordinary flow of thinking, the more weak that thinking will become. It's like, for instance, if you've got some kind of structure, some kind of stone, I don't know, structure, and you manage to get water in there, you manage to get a little crack in that structure, and then you kind of hammer water in there. Well, like you get on some cliffs, you get a part of it, you get a crack opened up, and then waves come in and they hammer into that place over and over and over again. So that gradually weakens that structure. So that's what we have to do with the thinking as well. We have to gradually weaken that structure through continually dipping into emptiness. And I'll come back to that point again when I speak about this Raj Yoga. Like, okay, how do we do that? How do we start to do that? Then this other part of Mohanji's quote, fall in love with love. Don't become a love story. So what's the significance of this? What's wrong with love stories? So love is always one, right? Uh, Love is just non-different from what we call the supreme consciousness, from what we call the self. So the real love is like a function of that. It's a function of knowing, oh, actually, we are all the supreme consciousness. You are me, and I am you. I am that. You are that. Right. So that's the real love. But in so love is always one, but in the case of love stories, there's always two in love stories. And in life, as long as you have two, as long as you have the perception of two, two solidly existing things, me and you, inside and outside. I am here, everything else is out there. I am just me, you are just you. We're totally separate. As long as this perspective is there, there's going to be trouble. So love is not just one, it's eternal. It's beginningless, it's endless. If you can dip into that empty part of yourself, your soul, you will see you can't find a beginning point for that. And you can't find an ending point for that. You can't find any point in that. It's just everything, inside, outside, all pervasive, space like beingness. But again, with love stories, there's a beginning and there's always an ending, right? Because a story is something that happens in time. In time, there's beginnings and there is endings. So the main thing is that what we call love stories often end because there's expectation, right? Entitlement, all of these things. These are the usual culprits for why love stories fall apart. But people who have got this real feeling for what love is, they'd say, you know, how can it be real love then? Okay, you know, you're with someone, you've got some kind of romantic connection. I mean, in this case, we don't even fall in love with a person. We fall in love with how that person makes us feel, basically. Like, as people, we like to think we are interested in other people, but we're not. We're interested in the way other people make us feel. We're interested in the way interaction with other people make us feel. And there's nothing wrong with this necessarily. No. That's also why people get connected to great guides, great masters, because it feels good to be connected with them. But in the case of what we call love stories, if someone doesn't make us feel good anymore, or doesn't make us feel the same way, we say, okay, now the love now the love story is finished. Now I don't love you anymore. So somehow circumstances, some kind of circumstantial connection between two people, three people, whatever that seems to work, gives us some sense of contentment, stability, balance for a period of time. And we say that that's love because we feel like we're touching something great through that, because again, these qualities, stability, contentment, feeling good, these are all innate in the truth, in the natural condition. But when that changes, we say love has gone. And we can blame other people. We can say it's you, or we can say it's not you, it's me. We can say whatever we want, but it is as it is. So this is why Mohanji says in that quote, "Don't be a love story," because when it comes to spirituality, we're always aiming at connecting and establishing ourselves in something which is permanent, right? Because that's ultimately the pains of our existence are all related to its impermanent nature, to its changing nature, to the fact that something is created, it persists, and then it dies. All of our sufferings are related to this changing fabric of reality. Body was healthy, now body is sick. Loved one was living, now loved one is dead. Loved one loves me, now loved one doesn't love me. Like, all of our miseries are coming from these changing realities. So the spirituality is to find something which is permanent, find something which is um, totally immune to change, basically. So also, I'm not advising to avoid love stories or any of these things because these things are the greatest teachers. Suffering is the greatest teacher. Realizing, wow, this doesn't work, or this does work, but it only works for so long. You know, all of these things are our teachers, and life comes together nicely like this. We should have all the experiences that we want to have, that we feel impelled to have. And on this timeline of spiritual evolution or unfoldment, as we're starting to get to the point where we're beginning to exhaust all of these experiences that we want, that's when these kind of little insights will start coming to us. Wow, no matter what I have, what I don't have, what experience I have, what position I have, what um, possession, what relationship I have, these things are going to come and go in time. These things can disappear completely, or these things can change and transform and separate whenever, at any time. And even if these things do persist in a convenient way for us, the physical death will wipe everything out anyway, as if it never happened. So these are the kind of insights that start creeping in when we're on our personal evolutionary timeline, as we're getting towards the the end, the point where we get liberation. And these kind of insights can even come, these insights don't even necessarily mean this is our last life. These can be a lot further back. The point is whether these insights stick or not, right? We can have these kind of insights, but then life can toss us a situation so good that we forget about everything. Then we don't want to think about death again. We don't want to think about impermanence again, because we find something which is so good and so convenient that we just want to get lost in that, get drunk in that. But drunkenness also brings the hangover. The hangover is when whatever it is crumbles, whether in this life, whether at death, whether in the next life, whatever. People can have things like, people can be born into wealth, multiple lives, one after the other. And then one life, finally, they become a pauper again, right? They've maybe stolen enough, cheated enough, and eventually the karma always flips back. So this flipping motion is ever present in karmic existence. So we can be guaranteed, as long as our happiness, our fulfillment is connected with changing things to any degree, even to the smallest degree, then we'll experience a flipping, or experience this pendulum like nature, back and forth, back and forth. So, as I've said many times, the real walking on this path is coming when we feel that this is that we don't want to be in this flip flopping existence. We want to find something beyond it. So really walking on the path only begins properly at that point. And then what happens? You start to go into yourself more and more. And does the flipping stop? No. The flipping of life situations continue right until the end, because situations have got a cause somewhere, whether in this life, whether in a previous life. All of our situations, whether relationship related, position related, possession related, wealth related, all of these things have got a cause somewhere in the past. And these causes have to bear fruit. So the path is not about somehow creating a perfect existence where we're going to become immune to things happening, things changing in life. Definitely not. um, I remember when I saw Devyama last time, she was talking about the suffering of terrestrial existence, and she said, when it comes to the lives of saints, forget about it. You can't even talk about the suffering that happens in the lives of of saints and the dramas and the misfortunes and the losses and all of these things. It's indecent to speak about it, right? Because no one will ever want to become a saint otherwise, if you tell them about all of that. So, but what happens is, as I keep saying on the group as well, is that as we go into this path, we start more and more as we go into ourselves, identifying, connecting with, identifying, and establishing ourselves as that part of us. There is a part of us that is always free, that is always detached, that's always independent, that's always blissful, that's always unidentified. So that part of us is our birthright. We're born with it, we're created with it. That essence of existence is fused, embedded into everything that exists. So we begin connecting with that, and eventually we sink into that, and then we're kind of only living in that. Like once you start connected with that, you start to feel the bliss of this emptiness. You lose interest in your mind, you lose interest in your personality, you lose interest in your personal circumstances. So you do what's ever natural still, but you stop paying attention so much to what's happening, what's not happening, what's not happening. And then you become more and more and more and more contained within. You can still do what you want, you can still speak to people, you can still do whatever. These things will happen as per as per the cause and effect. But where your identification is, where your feeling of who you are, this is goes somewhere else. This goes somewhere that you can't perceive from outside. This is the real cave. That's the real cave. Is not somewhere in the Himalayas. The real cave is in the heart. You know where the real self is. And as you go in there, you become less interested in what's happening, what's not happening. Things still continue to unfold, bad things, good things. But because you've lost this instinct for self-defense, basically, you've lost this instinct to try and control, manufacture your circumstances so this specific thing happens or this specific thing I manage to avoid. Because all of this plotting, all of this plotting and planning and scheming that we do, this is just creates more and more and more and more karma, more and more and more lives. Because we're paying for all of this. When we say, "Hey, look, I want life to be like this. I want this scenario to happen. I want this possession. I want this position. I want this relation. I want this experience." We don't see it, but life is saying, okay, you want that? This is the contract. This is the price that you're going to have to pay. This is how long it'll take to pay it off. This is the debt scheme. This is the interest scheme, and it goes like this. But we don't see this happens invisibly. We don't see this. It's like we say, "Oh, I want to murder somebody." Okay. Most of these people that do that, they don't see this huge contract which is being drawn up, which is like, okay, you want to take somebody's life, fine, you can take somebody's life, but this is what it's going to cost you over this life, over the next lives. So these contracts are all there. So even as we do become more and more established in emptiness, in the real self or whatever, these contracts still have to play out, right? Um, I've even heard people that close to Manji as well that lived with him, traveled with him, saying as well, sometimes he's had these random occurrences, random meetings that somehow seem to fall outside of the, you know, set schedule. And he said, yeah, this is on the um, this is on the contract sheet. This has to be paid back. This has to be done and then finished. So all of these things will still happen. All of these things will still be there. But the difference is that you'll let these things happen completely naturally with a total state of surrender, and you won't be creating more of these things. That's the main thing, because you won't be manufacturing situations with this heavy sense of, oh, I'm doing this because I think this is going to make me happy, or I think this is going to allow me to avoid this thing I don't want. So it's the same, always these poles of desire and fear, attachment and avoidance. They always come together. So you could still you'll go through this. It still looks like, oh, you know, I'm creating this, I'm creating that. Maybe you create some connection. Maybe you start a new job. Maybe you buy something. But the point is with what attitude are you doing these things? And also, are you attaching to these things? Do you care whether this relationship ends, whether this position changes, whether this you lose this possession or whatever? So it's so this is why it's difficult to tell. It can look sometimes just like people who are Jivan Muktas, they're living like normal people, but we don't necessarily see the attitude with which they are doing things. If you're really sensitive, you can. If you observe someone enough, you can see these things. That's why Mohanji always says also with gurus as well. He says take your time to see who you're dealing with actually, because anyone can pretend to be anyone, you know. You meet somebody at some whatever, some online or some seminar or whatever. Anyone can pretend to be anyone, but time, as we all know, time reveals. Time reveals the true nature of people. So yeah, that's that. So that's kind of how it's going, the journey. And then to return again to this point about this message on the group about this Raja Yoga and about difference between Buddhist mindfulness and awareness in Raj Yoga, I said there, and I'll repeat, these are just different levels of the same thing. It's all well and good talking about a state of witnessing that when we're totally non-attached to everything and we can watch our life like it's, you know, a movie, like it's happening in third person. But how does this begin? How do we get to that point? We get to that point by being more and more and more and more conscious, conscious of what we're doing, conscious of what we're saying, conscious of what we're thinking, consciousness of what we're feeling. See this? So that's mindfulness, basically. I'm mindful of what I'm doing. I'm mindful of what I'm thinking, feeling, all these things. So that needs to be there first, whether you call it mindfulness, whether you want to call it awareness, whether you want to call it being present, whether you want to call it being in the now, not in the Mao. Whether you want to call it any of these things, it's insubstantial, right? The point is to do it. Then as you go deeper in that, it's like I say many times as well, it's like building a muscle. In the beginning, the muscle is very weak. You can't, you're doing this, you're doing that, your mind constantly wanders, you know, so you're doing a task. I always say to people, when action is happening, make that action your meditation. So if you're cleaning, make the cleaning the meditation, do it perfectly, make it an art. If you're cooking, do the cooking perfectly, make it an art. you're chopping something, feel each, when the knife comes down on each things, do it all perfectly, all consciously. If you're walking, feel each step on the ground. Same, driving, whatever, fully conscious, do whatever you're doing. So there has to be that intensity of awareness there all the time. And then that gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And the stronger that gets, the more easily um, you'll be able to overcome the power of thoughts to kind of project that cloud over your whole consciousness of whatever emotion it is, whether it's fear, whether it's excitement, even whether it's sadness, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever. The more you strengthen your consciousness, your attention, the more that'll be able to unravel. So it's all just the same thing. It's the same with this Patanjali's Ashtanga yoga as well. This the last four stages are pratyahara, um, dharan, dhyan, samadhi. These are all just a deepening of um, one process. So this process at different levels, it looks a different way. Um, Likewise, if we get to this point where we become able to return back to a feeling of being present, return back to be a feeling of being aware or silent. Eventually, this will give way to, we'll recognize our real nature, and then the practice will just shift to, okay, we return back to our perception of our natural state. And so practice is all just going like this on different depths. So there's no real difference here, to be honest. And even mindfulness in the context of Buddhism is only dipping the toe into those practices. Um, these whole sphere of what we call this Raj Yoga, whatever Raj Yoga is, Buddhists wrote in the most detail about these things actually within their systems of called Dzogchen and Mahamudra. These are the highest possible practices. It's only after I had um, awakening, recognizing the self. Mainly, I was just reading Buddhist texts, certain texts about Dzogchen, and that was helping me actually. So at that point, all Hindu texts failed me actually because there's they lack clarity in a lot of places between the awakened state and the fully perfected state, the fully dissolved state. In Buddhism, there's a clear distinction in Dzogchen, at least, that awakening they call recognizing your mind or recognizing your natural state. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning of that practice. Then you train in it. Okay. A lot of people these days, they think awakening is the end only because there's not much clarity. Because rarely people go beyond that. So that's why we see armies of people today trying to set themselves up as gurus and this and that, especially with the tags of non-duality and these kind of things. Yeah, maybe people have a glimpse of their nature. So what? That's the beginning. As Mohanji says, awakening or enlightenment is if that's 30%, the other 70% is dissolution, and dissolution occurs after awakening, after recognizing, wow, I'm not my body, I'm not my personality. That's only starting after that. So path is not it's not an overnight thing, right? And we've got to live through it as well. Like I said, these experiences, they're coming to us. We don't know what's in our debt sheet. These things are coming to us. We've got to experience them. They're not going anywhere. Fears are not instantly going to go anywhere like that. Desires are not going to go anywhere like that. We have to learn to live with these things whilst deepening um, within ourselves, within our sense of stability, equanimity, and all of these things. And then when these things happen, they're not as severe as they would have been. So even the things that are coming to us, even these things, if our practice is deeper, when they come to us, they won't be as strong, they won't be as traumatic, right? Some still may be, extreme, but we'll be able to deal with these things. So it makes everything better. So one of my main things as well is not to try and think, okay, let me get rid of this fear, let me get rid of this desire. No, let me strengthen my consciousness, my presence, my awareness, my acceptance, my surrender. And then these things will sort themselves out. You you can't just go in like a sharpshooter and say, okay, I'm going to get rid of this, because it's not going to happen. These things have got a duration. So instead of focusing on getting rid of something, focus on cultivating awareness and acceptance, and then that allows us to move through whatever we need to move through with more equanimity, more strength, more surrender, more acceptance. So this is it. The whole thing is it's not an abstract thing, as I always say. It's not something you do for 1 hour in the morning and then go about the rest of your day. It is a lifestyle, as Mohanji says. Liberation is a lifestyle. It is the way you live, the way you do everything. Is your awareness there with whatever you're doing? Are you seeing where you're not accepting? Are you seeing where you're trying to control? Are you seeing when you're acting on the basis of fear? When you're acting on the sense of lack, scarcity, not being enough, insecurity. It's not about going in and then feeling bad when we see these things or trying to get rid of them. It's seeing, because the normal condition in Kali Yuga is total unconscious living. Speaking unconsciously, doing unconsciously, thinking unconsciously, feeling unconsciously. So this is a recipe for misery and continued reincarnation here or in some other realm which is resonant with whatever frequency we're existing in. So that's it. That's that's all I wanted to say. So yeah, unless anyone wants me to say anything more, we can finish the pravachan there, the sermon. It was.